Death is one of life's most unnerving truths. But what happens after we die? Some say there's absolutely nothing after life. Well, these experiences might make you think otherwise. Today, we have 3 truly strange paranormal encounters. So, without further hesitation, let's begin. Number 1. This story begins in Buckner Building in Whittier, Alaska. Whittier itself is creepy enough. It's a small town filled with drunk fishermen, homeless people, and random blue-collar workers. The town also has a lot of mining, fishing, military, and native history. The only way into the town is through a one-way, 3-mile tunnel carved into a mountain. The Buckner Building is the oldest building in the town, and is now condemned, decrepit, and fenced off. It was originally a large barracks for the military, then became a hospital, and then turned into a giant apartment complex for the entire population of the town. Eventually, a new apartment building and some hotels were set up, and the Buckner Building was abandoned. My ex and I decided that we were going to break into it and explore. Technically, a felony, but plenty of people do it. Graffiti, litter, homeless shelters, remnants of ghetto parties are everywhere. We show up around 2 a.m. with only our phones as flashlights. We sneak through a break in the fence and go through a big busted down wall that leads into the first floor. Immediately, I feel off. The air is thick and it constantly feels like there's someone right behind me. She feels it too. Despite this, we push on. Going through some more rooms, we start hearing noises. Not noises like dripping water or our footsteps, but shuffling and doors opening and closing. We look around for potential homeless people, but after scanning almost the entire first floor, we realize we are the only ones there. We eventually get to this long hallway where you can basically see from one side of the building to the other, or you could if it wasn't dark. Both of us heard a relatively loud whisper coming from the end of the hallway. It's worth mentioning that at this point, I have so much pressure on my chest, I can barely breathe. It's at this point my ex suggested we turn around. We go back to the entrance and sit on a concrete slab to have a smoke before we go home. While we are smoking, I pull out a bootleg Ouija board I'd made earlier. We ask it a few questions and get the strongest response either of us have ever received from a board. I don't remember all the questions, but I remember the responses were super dark and aggressive. My ex had this weird fascination with the number 27, and when she asked the board what it meant, it said something along the lines of love, death, you die. We finished our cigarettes, said goodbye to the board and to the building. As we turned towards the hole in the wall from whence we came, there was an enormous crash from behind us. We hightailed it out of there, and as I broke the threshold of the wall, I felt a physical force push me out of the building, and I lost my footing. It felt like a big gust of wind almost grabbed me and moved me out of the building. We ran out to the road and calmed down for maybe 30 seconds before we heard blood-curdling screaming coming from about a mile down the pitch-black road. It sounded like someone was being murdered, except the screaming was moving towards us. We both ran all the way to our car and noped the fuck out of that town. We ended up back at our dorm around 5 a.m. for aggressive and adrenaline-filled lovemaking. So, the night turned out okay. Number 2. About 20 years ago, my great-grandmother passed when I was in my early teens. We didn't live in the same state as her, so unfortunately, we missed her funeral. But we were able to drive 2,000 miles to visit the rest of the family a couple weeks later. I come from a Catholic family, so it was no surprise that in her home, she had the typical religious candles and statues of many saints. Among the things, there was a blonde doll in a blue dress in a glass cabinet. We were told by my aunt that the doll's hair grew, and apparently they took regular care of it, bathed it, washed its clothes, trimmed its hair. They were also convinced that there was a spirit living in it. Coincidentally, My mom was familiar with the doll and tried to convince me that the doll's hair had grown. I wasn't buying it, so I paid close attention to the length of the hair. The hair flowed a little past their shoulders, nothing spectacular, and it looked like regular doll hair too. A couple years later, my grandmother wanted to revisit our out-of-state family members. So, what did I do when I first got there? Yep, I immediately went to the doll. Shockingly, its hair had outgrown the length of the doll. So I talked with my family, and they said the doll was grief-stricken due to the passing of my great-grandmother. They said they even saw tears streaming down her face a couple days after we had previously seen them. They explained that they had stopped cutting her hair because apparently that was my great-grandmother's thing. I haven't seen the rest of my family since, but we hear from them every once in a while. And the doll is still with them, hair still growing and everything. Totally bizarre. Never did get an explanation about where the doll came from, except that it may have come from Mexico.
Number 3.
So, about 2 years ago, I began waking up to a man standing next to my bed. At first, I thought it was night terrors as I had them quite a lot in my earlier years. But I began to realize it was happening far too much and without the paralyzing fear that came with night terrors. Each night, I would wake up to him standing right next to me as I slept. He would wear a khaki uniform, like you would see a chief wear in the US Navy. However, it was simply the blouse and pants, no pins, no ribbons, nothing. I could make out his face quite clearly, and I could see that he was a bit of a heavyset. At first, probably the first 3 months, it would scare the crap out of me. I would literally jump on my ex-husband because it startled me so bad. However, over time, it became familiar. It didn't scare me as much. I started asking him questions, imploring him to tell me why he was there. But he would always disappear about 10 to 15 seconds after I woke up. This went on for about a year. Then, about 7 months ago, when I decided to finally start the divorce proceedings, he stopped visiting me. However, new spirits started visiting me at night. It didn't start happening again until I moved back home. I haven't seen him since, but like I said, there are others now. One instance, I was sleeping over my boyfriend's mother's house. I woke up and boom, a man standing next to the bed. This time, I couldn't make him out very well. I could see though that he was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Again, he disappeared shortly after I woke up. And now, it's starting to happen in my own home. At first, it was someone standing at the end of my bed. Then, someone was sitting on my bed. None of them really scared me all that much. Which brings me to my most recent encounter. It was about 2 weeks ago. I woke up because I was hot. At least that is what I think and remember the reason was. Anyway, I looked around my room as I always do, and there was someone standing in front of my window. But looking outside, I soon fell back asleep. Woke up and he was facing the wall. I fell back asleep again, and woke up to him facing the corner. He did scare me, and I feel as though it was because he wouldn't look at me. And no, I don't know for sure if it was a man, but the way he was built and dressed, that's what my mind perceived. The spirit was wearing jeans, a black hoodie, and Converse. That was new. The shoes, I had never noticed that detail in any of my previous spirits, so I fell back asleep at some point, from exhaustion probably, and didn't wake up until the morning. I guess I'm sharing in hopes that perhaps someone can shed some light on this. I wouldn't say that I've always been able to see spirits, but I have seen quite a few in my life. I'm 27 years old for reference. I have never been able to converse with any of them, nor have they ever spoken to me. The only time I've ever heard anything was when I was about 7 years old, and I kept hearing my name said over and over again. I suppose I need guidance on how to treat these spirits, how to talk to them, and how to make them leave when they terrify me. If you need any clarification, or the like, please let me know. and I always wondered why dolls kinda creeped me out. Anyway, thank you guys for sticking around to the end. There will be more to come very soon. But don't forget to send your stories to the email on the screen. It seems there can even be disturbances in your own home, so you guys stay safe out there. Until next time. Eventually, a new apartment building and some hotels were set up and the Buckner Building was abandoned. My ex and I decided that we were going to break into it and explore.